Welcome, everybody. How y'all doing? Everybody good? Okay, my name is Mikey Muhanna. I run a platform called Afikra. One of the things we do is we host a podcast called Quartertones that explores what music from the Arab world did, does, and might sound like in the future. I'm really excited. The second year we're doing in collaboration with Soul. And with us tonight are two giants of the music industry. Ghazi Shami is the founder of Empire Records, based in California. And Suhel Nafar is the head of Empire WANA and is of damn fame and is an icon in his own right. And it is a huge honor to have you both here. Thank you so much. Maybe Ghazi, there's a good place to start with you, which is, what does it feel like when you're actually here? You're in the region. You flew in yesterday or 2 days ago. You were in Saudi. Now you're here. How does it actually feel to be here, sort of, in the Arab world?
Spiritually or physically?
Both.
Physically, I'm jet lagged.
Yeah.
Spiritually, it's very surreal. It's a very special feeling to be someplace that the embodiment of music and what music has always meant to the region for so many years, in terms of like all the classics we grew up on, but also like the trajectory of like where the industry and infrastructure and culture and the emergence of like certain different levels of acceptance and like the proliferation of culture, like seeing that happen like right before our eyes at a place,
Yeah.
at a festival like this is really special, right? Because these are the things that we grew up on in America that we thought the rest of the world would never have, and now the rest of the world has surpassed us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to the interview that you gave a while ago, and in the interview, I don't know if it was cut this way, but basically, they were asking you, where are you from? And you're like, I'm from San Francisco, like, period. I am Palestinian, period. How does that actually feel now, here, right? Like, in this world that we're living in right now. You're coming from California with insane amounts of
Trying to wipe out the jet lag.
man, I'm making Ghazi cry. It's crazy.
Yeah. Very emotional.
Second question, and I'm killing it.
Yeah. How does it feel to be here?
Yeah, how's it feel as, like, you run this massively important label distribution company as somebody who is Palestinian?
It feels important, like on a DNA level, on a cellular level, because it building something. I was born and raised in San Francisco, so I always wanted to do something for my community and empower the artists in my community. Yeah. But now I can empower artists of my DNA. That's on a whole nother level. It's like 3 layers deeper, right? So putting on for your community is on a whole nother level than putting on for your culture and your ethnicity, and putting on for your lineage. There's just like a deeper construct there that.
Yeah, it's funny because
it's really hard to explain. I mean, one layer of it is being Arab, but being Palestinian and being stateless and displaced and being the son of a refugee magnifies it times 1,000 for me.
Yeah. It's funny. Suhail, I'm going to bring you in. I texted Suhail beforehand.
We
right?
spoke many times.
We spoke many times. But I texted him beforehand, and he was like, what do you want the interview to be about? And I said, I kind of want to call the interview inspired by something you posted on Instagram, where you posted just this black image, and it has the text, if you can't speak up for your own people, you really ain't shit.
Yeah.
Who are you talking to in that message?
The diaspora. People that are afraid to be encumbered because of the positions that they're in. And speaking up for your own people doesn't necessarily mean you have to speak on social media. It means speaking amongst your peers, amongst your friend groups, amongst your family, amongst your colleagues. Some people have the ability to influence thousands. Some people have the ability to influence millions. Some people have the ability to only influence one. But for me, it's just about paying it forward and do your part. it's a very complicated construct, and I understand that a lot of people maybe are concerned with their livelihood, but for me, I said I would always operate in silence until it was time for me to magnify whatever it was I wanted to magnify, because I knew that I wanted, I use this analogy, I just say the mosquito became a bald eagle. So when I was a mosquito, I had to kind of buzz in silence because somebody could smack your wings and just take you out. Then at some point you get into a position in life where you have a lot more leverage and ability to speak freely. And I just believe you know, there comes a point in time as a man you want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm proud of who I am as a human. And I don't think I would be proud of who I was as a human if I didn't speak up on behalf of who I am as a man. It's one that kind of coincide, right? Like
Yeah.
the person in the mirror is, that reflection needs to coincide with what I feel on the inside.
What does it cost? What does it cost to do that?
I don't know. It doesn't really matter at this point. You know, I've had enough blessings in life that if I lose a little, it's okay.
Suhail, as somebody working with Ghazi, like you live this, right? Like this is in your music, it's in your art, it's in the way you've moved as a business person yourself. Can you talk a little bit about your role at Empire and how you are actually trying to bring in other people and give them a platform to speak up for their people?
As you said it, like it came from my music days. Because when I was young, started music when I was 14 years old, performing and touring. But there was a lot of gaps. Back in my day, we didn't have tools. That was pre-MySpace, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just said how old I am, I think. I'm not that old. I just go back in time.
What was that website again?
Arabrap.net.
Arabrap.net. Hey,
That was the first. Did someone say yeah? Like, do you know it? Oh, shit. Nice. So Arabrap.net really is a website that opened back then from a kid programmer in Nazareth and started it. And it was only about the hip hop scene. And there was damn in it at first only.
Yeah, that's it.
Because there was nothing back in the day. But then, you know, slowly with the evolution of technology and all the tours that came, things became easier. But for us Palestinians, specifically in Lid, where it's mostly like, you know, it's like a ghetto. There isn't any youth centers. There isn't cultural centers. There's no stages, no nothing. So we had to build everything ourselves. And one of the things that I always remember, and I have flashbacks of those days, is that we had a festival that we wanted to do in between 13 houses that were about to be demolished. And for us to fight the government, the Israeli government, not to demolish it, we created a festival. And the way we did it is because it's like unrecognized neighborhood in Lid. What we did is we went with activists, collected all the plastic, all the garbage, all the trash, and we created big-ass, tall dolls, like كلهم هيك plastic, huge ones.
Yeah.
And then we collected كل السطول الزبالة, and we created drums. And then we collected all the woods, and then we called all the construction friends. We got 2 trucks parked back to back, built pieces of wood. I was literally like, we couldn't walk in the street. We were that famous in Palestine, but you would see us with hammer and nail building that stage, calling friends, each person bringing a speaker and putting it up. So this moment is a moment that I always go back to because it has a lot of depth in it. It's not just creating the festival, and it's 3 days summer camp for the kids, cleaning the trash, building this puppet, and then marching to the court and to the police and fighting it. And then actually this whole fight stopped from those houses being demolished. So it felt like it's building something independently, DIY, with your people, with your team, with the artists that you work with every day, and then fighting for something, and then you're actually achieving it and winning.
Yeah.
So this specific story of these 3 days is something that's still with me every day. So when I talk to artists, for me, when I tell them about their gaps and closing their gaps and helping them with their tools, you know, today you have many tools from social media to data tools. You have more labels, more distribution, more agencies to help you. I try to help that kid who's Suhail and his friends with that hammer, with that nail of how not to get to this situation that they need to do something like that. So I think it's going from that day till 30 years later. Shit, again, I mentioned that I'm old. To 30 years later
Yeah.
of closing these gaps. So that's literally the philosophy, and that's why I found like Ghazi and Empire as that tool that I wanted, because I was working at Spotify, and when I met Ghazi at the Spotify Grammy party, and I came to him and I was like, I came to you as a big fan, and I started speaking English to him, and he looks at me and was like, "شو مالك بحكي عربي شو بتحكي عربي معي بلا شو?" I was like, "Yeah, bro, what's wrong with you? I'm from your hometown." I was like, "What do you mean?"
You're from Lid too? No
Yeah.
shit. Wow.
The story gets deeper even because that was like in 2018 ولا 19 that we met for the first time, even though that I knew all his team and was playlisting a lot of the catalog that
Wow.
he had, and I was a fan because anytime any artist came to the office, that I really liked how their team operated. But then it all clicked from there, and I found it that out of all the industry people that were out there, I felt comfortable with him because I knew that he understand the global and the expertise of being global, but he's still local because he has his local cultural moments, the
Yeah.
moves, the way they move.
Okay, I want to go back to the local culture. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to your Mosquito days. Okay, you are uploading ringtones. You're on Rhapsody. You're basically this like distributor for artists. That version of Ghazi, if I sat and hung out with them and I'm like, let's fast forward to 2024, what does Empire look like? What would he have said back in those days when it was really just only a distributor in the days of iTunes and Rhapsody and when ringtones mattered?
You want the honest answer?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make rent this month. That's the honest answer.
The 300 square foot.
Yeah, that's the struggle to bubble. That's like sleeping in the office on the couch, taking a shower in the sink. Like, I always tell people you never focus on the war, you focus on the battle. You focus on the entire war, it feels suffocating. You go one battle at a time, you look up, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'm gaining ground. But yeah, it was a struggle.
But how,
I didn't have no vision of 10 years forward. My dad had just died. Like, my mom was struggling. My brother was unemployed. It was the '08 crash in the United States. Like, we was just trying to figure it out.
this is after you left tech completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had 4 jobs right when I started Empire.
Yeah.
So, like, people think it's like all glitz and glamour. It's not glitz and glamour. That's not what gets you to this point. It's the struggle that creates the character, creates the wisdom, the skill set, the Rolodex of failures that enable you to understand what you shouldn't do. Because knowing what to do is equally, knowing what not to do is equally as important as knowing what to do, right?
When did
But it's just a lot of wisdom and trial and error and figuring it out. And
when did you sort of articulate to yourself, okay, I'm going battle by battle, that's fine. But when did you sort of start to think to yourself, okay, this is what a year looks like. This is what a couple years look
there's
like.
no doubt in my mind that I was going to make it. I just didn't know what it was going to look like.
Yeah.
I just knew I'm paying my bills off music. That's it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I'm never going back to a 9-to-5. I'm not reporting to somebody. I got to do this by myself. Because my dad used to always tell me, we brought you to America for opportunity. He always told me that. He's like, you have every opportunity in the world here. Like, don't be lazy. Don't be afraid to fail. Just go get it. And me and him used to argue all the time because I had a really good tech job. I was 24. I kind of had it made if I just stayed in tech.
Yeah.
Because I had the hustle. And I was a charismatic kid. So I was a hustler. I was a charismatic kid. I knew a lot about tech. I knew how to mouthpiece my way into things. I could talk my way into things. And then I would just figure it out. You just be resourceful and you figure it out. And I remember when I told my dad I was quitting my job, and he said, "Are you crazy? Inta majnoon?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Baba, you started at the bottom of the ladder."
I want to talk to you about your dad.
Yeah, it's like, you started at the bottom of the ladder. You put me at the middle of the ladder. I have a home. You didn't have a home. You was a refugee. You put me in good schools. We live in a middle-class house. You work 2 jobs a day to provide for me. I would be a disservice, to you as a father if I didn't do better than you? Like, I got to surpass you. I'm only 24. I don't have kids. I don't have a family. You came here at 40 years old. You had responsibility. I don't have responsibility. If I'm going to take a chance on myself, right now is the time to take a chance on myself. And then we got in that big ass argument, and I ended up renting a warehouse, and he helped me build studios together. It was like one of my favorite memories. I wish I documented it, but at that time period, there wasn't really smartphones and stuff. But it's like my favorite memory. Me and my dad carrying sheetrock and building studios together. You know, it was the first time where there was like a little shred of, okay, I'm gonna let you rock out. I'm gonna let you do your thing.
I want to talk about the laundromat. What did it mean to you to see your dad have a second job where he's running a laundromat, coin-operated laundromat? He doesn't need to, right? He has a job, but he, like, that hustle, that level of hustle, seeing a whole second entrepreneur, like an entrepreneurial spirit in your dad. What did that teach you about running your own business?
You know, at a very young age, I think I realized his commitment to his children and to his family. And that's helped me be a good father to my children. And I think that was always ingrained from me from a little kid, that like I was always taught a man's duty is to protect and provide. So he instilled that in me from the time I was a child, and I saw him literally do, you know, like he walked what he talked.
Yeah.
And so he didn't retire till he was 70 years old, and then he died a couple years later because he basically worked his whole life to make sure we were straight.
Going into, like, as Empire grows, I heard somewhere you saying that, like, you wanted to retire once you got your first gold album, right?
Yeah.
You've had many
Gold
more.
album. I used to tell people I would retire if I got a gold song.
Yeah.
It's be like, I just want to put one plaque on the wall, and then I'm out.
Yeah. What was the first song that meant the most to you, or first project that you're like, fucking A, I made it?
I don't know. It's people ask me stuff like that all the time, and it's really hard for me to say because that period of time was so insane. It's kind of blurry because you're working 18 hours a day. You don't know when the day starts, when the day ends. I can't remember which plaque was first. I don't remember which album that was big was first. If I sat there and like did chronological order, maybe I could figure it out. But it's not really important to me. Like the culmination of the success and of the people and the success for the people around me that are part of the framework is a lot more important to me than like what was the first big song. Like I'm not really that type of person. Like the people ask me, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite album of all time? I'm not mentally not like structured that way.
The reason why I ask is because, like, you guys played a really big part in Section 80, right?
Yeah.
Kendrick is like maybe the most influential artist in the world right now, maybe even across every single medium. Yeah. This is an insanely influential project. How do you feel seeing him perform at this level? And I don't mean a literal performance. Like, how do you see him deliver at this level?
You know, it's hard for me to measure how I feel because we were only a small cog in that wheel at a very particular moment in time. You know, we were an early digital distributor at that time, so we were kind of one of the only things available to the marketplace. So almost everybody in the West Coast went through us because we were kind of the only show in town. And so,
can you, for those of us who don't understand, what does it actually mean to distribute something digitally then? What did that actually mean?
It was cutting edge at that time period. You know, I used to sit there and argue with people. Like, bro, we got to get your catalog on digital. And they're like, what's that digital shit? And I'm like, bro, you know, like the iPod, like iTunes. Oh, okay, cool, rock out. So I would literally go to the store and buy people's catalogs and bring their catalogs back to the office, rip all the content and load it all up for them. And then 60 to 90 days later, run outside and hand out a check.
You're
like
kidding.
Literally on the block, people would drive by. Sorry for all the slang. I grew up in the Bay. I'll try to keep it a little bit more corporate for you.
No, do your thing.
Yeah. But yeah, like I would literally run outside on the street and people would drive by and I would hand out checks or they would ring on the doorbell and come
Santa
upstairs.
Claus.
It was, I would say Robin Hood more than Santa Claus.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, there was a era of piracy. there was lack of monetization. There wasn't a lot of people who understood the space. So there was, anytime there's a lack of understanding, there's a great opportunity for people to take advantage of others.
Yeah.
So people were taking people's digital rights and stuff. So I was out there just literally, you know, the less blind leading the blind. You know,
Yeah.
so I was just less blind.
Did you think of yourself as like a tech platform primarily, or
Nah.
did you think of yourself as an advocate for artistry? What did you think of yourselves internally as a culture?
I
as
personally
Empire?
felt like I was just an advocate for culture who understood tech. And in a period of time where those two worlds hadn't overlapped yet, I was just early. And I'm literally just a product of my environment, because he's talking about things like MySpace, you know, MySpace, Napster, YouTube, all those companies, Twitter, all started in my backyard. I grew up in San Francisco. So I was, you know, aware of things that the general public wasn't aware of because of my societal construct. So I'm in the streets making rap records, but then I'm also subjected to all this next level tech that's flourishing, you know.
Yeah.
But it was so early that the initial waves didn't even connect. They failed, you know, because a lot of people didn't understand. They didn't understand MP3s. There was no smartphones. There was no mass consumption model. There wasn't broadband yet. So you would create all these tools and do all these cool things, and then you would go home and none of it works.
Yeah.
So at first, a lot of it fell on deaf ears, but it gave me the skill set that later on I would figure out. You know, like I use the Karate Kid analogy, where it's like wax on, wax off, up, down, and you don't know even why you're even doing it. And then one day somebody throws a punch at you, and then it's just your natural instinct to react. So a lot of the things that were, you know, maybe second or third nature to other people had become my first nature, just because I was a product of my environment.
Yeah. I was having a conversation earlier today about ambition. And the argument basically was exploring if ambition basically comes from a negative place. If it comes from jealousy, if it comes from desire to acquire wealth or acquire stature, where does this almost seamlessly endless ambition come from in the context of living in a 300 square foot apartment for way longer than you need to because you're trying to pour all of your money into Empire?
It all came from a place of love, not anything negative. I really just wanted to provide for the people I cared about, because I spent all my life in the studio and I saw people doing record deals that were bad record deals. That's how I first started to acquire some of the knowledge, because you would see somebody go out and sell 30,000 CDs independent, and then they would say, I'm unrecouped. Like, how are you unrecouped? You just sold 30,000 discs. And then you start to look at the contracts and you start to understand the construct, and you're like, this wasn't set up in a way for you to win.
Yeah.
You're always robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's like they're dangling the carrot in front of you and you're on the treadmill. You can never make it to the carrot. And then every once in a while, maybe somebody leaps off the treadmill and eats the carrot. But it was it all came from a place of like pure love, honestly. Just love for the music, love for my community, the artists who were really my friends. When you sit on the floor with an artist in the studio, you're eating sandwiches, you're talking about your kids, talking about your wins, losses, people that died, went to jail. Just, you know, you start to form a bond that's way deeper than anything to do with music. My mom used to always tell me that when I was a kid, she recognized that something was different in me because I was never jealous of anybody. I don't really have that emotion inside of me. I always tell people, don't be jealous by it, be inspired by it. Don't be jealous of it, be inspired by it. And so I never found jealousy in seeing somebody else succeed. I was always proud of people succeeding and saying, that's dope, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Who were some of the inspirations? I mean, like, were they in the same industry? Were they businesses? Was it like Capitol Records? Were you looking at Motown? Who were you looking at and saying, oh, I want to be like them?
My family. They came from, you know, across the world with nothing and made it. And they were providing for their children and their children's children. That was my inspiration.
Did they go directly to San Francisco?
My uncle my oldest uncle went through Ellis Island. and then
Wow.
jumped on a bus to Detroit and decided Detroit was too cold and jumped on another bus and ended up in San Francisco.
مش غلط والله.
But it was literally that random. He's like, we bought oatmeal cookies and milk to last us for the bus ride because it was like a few days on the bus. And he's
Yeah.
like, we ate oatmeal cookies and milk until we made it to San Francisco. And early on, I heard their stories about how, they worked at grocery stores and then they saved up enough money to cut a deal with the guy that was providing the groceries. And then he said, I'll lend you enough groceries to open up your store. And it's just like how you leverage the distribution chain, the supply chain, and relationships. And then you build your own place. And then your brother comes and works for you. And then he can move out and buy his own store.
Yeah.
And so I saw success stories of entrepreneurship on what I call the micro level. I said, I want to replicate that, but I want to do it on a macro level. I don't want to build something that's just on the corner. I want to build something that can become global and affect change on a global level. Like I said, they started at the bottom of the ladder. So to see them achieve that was inspiring for me because I was like, if you could come from nothing and become that, then I can become anything.
Yeah.
So I always tell all the people that work with me and my counterparts, my coworkers, my artists, I always say, live your life limitless.
When did the label start? I mean, people now like so here's here they're like, okay, Empire is a label. That's what a lot of people would imagine. But at first it was basically a distribution company primarily. When did you decide to go from that mosquito into a label as well?
So started as a distribution company first because it was cheaper. You didn't have to spend on radio, television, publicity, marketing. I didn't have the money. That was one. Two was if you own the supply chain, you own the data. So in an era where you would have to wait 6, 8, 12 weeks for data, I was able to get data every day because I own the software, the technology, the supply chain. And then the third thing was practice makes perfect. If you want to become a label, you got to practice. You want to be a great free throw shooter, get on the free throw line, shoot 1,000 free throws and refine your technique. Being a distributor allowed me to refine my approach to marketing because I could take a lot of shots. And then around 2015, we started to make a commitment to becoming a label because I knew distribution margins were just going to get too slim and it's going to be impossible to be profitable.
Because tech is ironing them out?
Because too many people were jumping in the game.
Okay.
Everybody thought they can just be a distributor and then everybody's undercutting everybody. Oh, they'll do an 80-20, I'll do 85-15. They'll do 85-15, I'll do 90-10. Now you have distributors out there distributing for zero because they're just trying to run up gross profits, bundle it all together and sell it to a private equity firm. You know,
And they're using the data as well. The data's valuable.
Yeah, it's like a big,
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about data, and I want to talk about Suhel. Your job, basically, I think your title is head of Empire WANA. صح? Okay, something like that. Essentially, what is the data telling you about the music that's coming from this region, and the interest that people have in it globally? And do you care about that? Do you care about global interest, or are you just trying to make music from the region for the region?
I think it's all, the world is smaller now than it ever used to be, right? So, but we have to also, data is not the final thing we look at, because in general, digital streaming platforms are new to the world. Like Ghazi mentioned, it was like 15, 20 years ago when it started really kicking in. But if you look at streaming platforms in the region, it only launched in 2018. It's still new.
Yeah.
And the thing about this region is, which is different than other regions, which is data showing something else. Like when you launch a platform in Korea, for example, it's usually just premium. There isn't any free user. But then when you launch here, you have to do the free user, the freemium, what they call it. And then a lot of the time, that's majority of the users. So the data is not 100% accurate when you look at it from the digital streaming platform world. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I call Empire not really a label. I call it like a cultural hub that has technology and music. And then that's why you see Empire is somebody that really early was in Africa and that really early was in the region here, because the data for us was always the ground, the culture. But looking at that ground, the culture, and the diaspora, the geopolitics of the region also connected to the data. If you look at the data these days of a lot of the artists, you would see, Germany's on the top, Indonesia's on the top, Canada's on the top of their list of people who watch their videos or social media, and that because of everything we had here, the wars and all that, then there's more immigrants in Germany, and then that brings a whole different audience from Germany. And that's what makes our world is even smaller. Like in 2019 and 20, Arabs were the biggest newcomers of Canada. That's what they called us there. And then suddenly we saw it in data where you see Canada's becoming like top 5 in every artist streams or even in the social media.
Yeah.
So that creates, which is something I always mentions, that creates this globalization energy where we are global within our culture of how we're spreading around and how we're going big and how our culture is traveling, but we're still local with what we're doing. But at the same time, sonically, too, you have genres like Maharaganat, which is very similar to like, yes, carnivals, and yes, it's hip hop, it's a little trap, but it's still Maharaganat, it's Shara, so it's mixing sonically the global sound with the local culture, and then that brings a whole new data where you walk in New York and 6th Avenue and every halal guy's truck has Maharaganat song. So I think that's kind of our real data. It's seeing these things. A couple of days ago we were talking, and Ghazi and I were talking about spices and exporting spices, and he was talking about spices war, which is, by the way, that's most of our conversations about history, a lot of the time. And then when we were talking about spices, like in my head, I was like, this is what's happening now. Back then, people used to come colonialize us for our spices, but now all these people are coming to get our culture, our music, not just our spices.
Yeah.
And now we're getting more global. We're going out more. You would see more sounds from our region going into different big songs, just like Timbo Days back with Ali album, but now even more. And that's really part of our strategy to just keep pushing culture first, and then data will cover it and prove it.
Arabic is the last untapped diaspora language. Every other diaspora language and music has already been tapped. So it's the last one that hasn't been monetized and properly and spread out properly.
How do you manage?
One more thing about like globalizing and exporting the music. Not every artist need to be exported. There's a lot of artists that their music sonically sound is for this area here only, and it's fine. It's fine to have your niche. It's fine to have your audience. Not everything has to be like, oh, let's globalize it. Let's make it sound like good for, I know, white kid on the beach in California. Nah, I mean, you could be one of the best Libyan musicians, and you can do well there. You know, this is something that we also have to. Diaspora is not the only market.
You can be
global,
Ahmed Fakroun of 2024.
Yeah. And I think about like we could give example of Larry June that has been like killing it in the Bay Area and California, and the music's doing well. Anytime he has any show, it's sold out. When his merch is always sold out, and he tours the world, but still his fan real base is there. So
for sure,
both.
Yeah, you can be too short of Libya, definitely. For sure, you're allowed. But the difference between using Too Short of Libya as an example, the problem is that we don't have venues here. I mean, we have Soul DXB, great. But like in our region, we have such issues with venues. We have such issue with security. We have such issue with performing. Every single border is like impenetrable. So it does, the business model changes pretty dramatically because of that, because you can't tour as much. But I want to talk about this idea of exporting. Hip hop, since its beginning, has been a vehicle for partying, but it's also been a vehicle for social conscience and for, talking about social justice. And the Bay Area has been at the center of that since the very beginning. How much appetite is there for socially conscious Arabic music in the rest of sort of the world of Empire? Like, are people responding to this? Are people responding to Arabic music with a message?
I think a a lot of Arabic hip hop fundamentally has a message in it, whether they're trying to convey a message or not. Um, but we also have to be cognizant of not being overly preachy,
Mm.
because when you get overly preachy, you also turn people off from the music. So it's kind of a fine line, you know. So you got to peel back the layers of the onion real slow. But there's, you know, you have like MC Abdul, who,
Yeah.
you know, he's definitely putting a message in his music. But I also spent time with him, and I said, look, I also think you have the capacity, the ability, the look, and the skill set to become a global artist that happens to be Palestinian, not a Palestinian rapper. I don't want to pigeonhole him to being, I'm just the popular rapper from Gaza. No, I'm a worldwide superstar who's also from Gaza and made it out.
How does he respond to that?
He's only 16 years old, but he's definitely wise beyond his years, and he just recently moved to the United States, and I've spent a lot more time with him in the last couple months. We talk on WhatsApp all the time, but spending time with him in person and coaching him through how to write records, how to feel more comfortable in his own skin,
Yeah.
you know, all the PTSD that he goes through and all that type of stuff. But, you know, putting him on stages where he's performing, you know, in his mind, he has to do all his shows in English because he's trying to get an English fan base or a mainstream fan base. And I'm like, no, don't forget who you are as well on the other side. You know, like
Yeah.
it's cool. You could talk to the crowd, say a couple things in Arabic, put a couple Arabic words in your songs, touch the diaspora that way, put some political messages in there, but also talk about the real struggles of a 16-year-old. Your first time driving a car, your first time falling in love, the girl broke your heart. Like other things that a 16-year-old goes through. Like bring people on your journey. Your journey is not just war. There's a lot more to life than just war.
In the like world of talent development, is it helpful to use comps? Is it helpful for you to say to this person, "Hey, listen, look at this person's come up. You should sort of mimic yourself or mold yourself in this image." You're mentioning basketball, right? Like in the world of basketball, they'll be like, you know, you're young, you don't know, you've never heard of Clyde Drexler, but study his game. You've never heard of Sean Kemp, study his game. Take his post game and take his left hand and take his defense and look at Gary Payton. Like, do you do that for, and this is to both of you, when you speak to young artists, you're like, study Ashanti, study whoever.
That's a careful balance, because sometimes the naivety of an artist is what produces the best creativity and the best art, because they're not mimicking or influenced by something else. Like if I worked in the record business, Empire wouldn't exist. I never worked for a record company. So I built my accounting system the way I thought it should be built. I built my supply chain the way I thought it should be built. I did marketing and promotion the way I thought marketing and promotion should be done. And then eventually I learned a little bit about the traditional music business, and I was like, okay, cool. If I'm Elon Musk and I'm building Tesla, maybe it's cool to look under the hood of a Mercedes that's 75 or 100 years of automotive greatness, right? So it's a nuanced balance. Yeah, you want to look at the greats, but for me personally, my greatest gift was my naivety. And so, I, like, there's a rapper, I don't want to say his name, but he's a really big rapper and probably does 500 million to 700 million streams a year. And if you would ask him, like, what are your favorite albums, he'll say, I barely listen to other people's music because I don't want to be influenced by their music.
Yeah.
I don't want you to listen to my music and say you hear so and so in my music because I became a fan of their music. So, and then on the flip side of it, you see other people emulate and then actually take it to the next level.
Sure.
So it's very nuanced. It's a lot of it would be on a case by case basis of looking at who the artist is, what they're trying to become, what their path is. Are they a viral artist? Are they a touring artist? Radio driven, social media driven, culture driven, fashion driven, brand driven, several of those things. And then
Yeah.
you kind of figure out how to nurture based on just years of wisdom and say, these are the things that I think this particular artist needs. But a lot of what you're saying happens naturally by putting people in the studio with great producers and doing collabs and features and touring. They're just going to kind of start to latch on to certain things that resonate with them just naturally as humans.
Suhail, I want to hear
I-
your perspective for sure.
should never say like you should do it this way, like this artist, or you should do it this way. It's all about working a lot. It's all about recording a lot. And as you just mentioned, the studio, and that's something that we're really fans of, because at the end of the day, the industry is becoming more, a lot of labels or companies looking at like TikTok, whatever's blows up, they go and to sign that artist. We don't really look into the industry this way. We really like the human experience before even talking about music. And I see some faces here of people that were actually in San Francisco in our studios, and first thing they did when they come was actually 3 days of just eating food and hanging out on the beach and just talking about the world, talking about life, exchanging, talking about family, talking, and then which I'm a fan of that. I'm not a fan of going straight to the studio and like, listen to this song, listen to this production. No, I want to know the artist, what angle they like to have their photos. Do they like the photo from the left side, the right side? Is it the front? How spicy do they like their food? What type of food? Are they allergic to something? This is like this experience, human experience, when you get it right, then becomes like family having fun. That is creating music that fits their model, but all we're doing here is we're just trying to amplify and elevate. We're not trying to recreate. We're not trying to tell you do this like this person. It's more the studio experience.
I take people on tours of the city. I rented a tour bus, and when I had like Alameda, Ashake, Fireboy, all them were in San Francisco from Nigeria, and I rented a tour bus and took like 40 people on a tour of the Bay Area. We went to Napa and went wine tasting. Like we spent the whole weekend together.
I want to come next time.
And then we spent 3 weeks in the studio recording albums that ended up getting nominated for Grammys because there was just like it was a vibe that you can't create that in a let's book a 4-hour session. That's very disposable.
You can't be yourself if you can't express yourself if you can't be yourself, and so you need to let them give them space to be themselves.
There needs to be a comfort level, and we'll oftentimes dress up the building in ways that make artists feel comfortable. If we're recording Mexican regional bands, we'll fly Mexican flags and hire cooks to come cook in the backyard. And when we did our Nigerian thing, I brought in a Nigerian cook. We did an African writing camp with all the producers from different countries and put all the flags in. When we did the Empire WANA event, we put all the Arab flags in the building. Just to give people something emotional to like latch onto and feel
amazing.
It's like that level of inclusion just kind of sparks a different type of creativity. Yeah. And a lot of companies are not doing that anymore because they're driven by market share and public stock prices and all that. And that's cool. That's cool from a business standpoint. I totally understand that. But at this point, I'm not really in it for the business. I'm really in it for the love.
Okay, I have 2 questions I'm going to try to squeeze in. The first one is taking a look at the industry here in the region right now. If you had to diagnose the strength of the music scene in the region right now and its core weaknesses, not from a just hater standpoint, but from a coaching standpoint, if you're like, these are the things you need to work on, if possible. Like I'll give you some ideas, right? So is it from a songwriting perspective? Is it from a performance perspective? We don't have enough venues. We don't have enough labels. We don't have enough whatever. Where are the weakest links?
Man, I live in a bubble, bro. Like, I don't look at what anybody else is doing. I just really look at what we're doing as a company.
But I mean, you're speaking to artists, though.
Yeah, within the sphere of our company. Like, I just look at it. This is a time investment, and nothing worth having comes easy in life. There's no shortcuts to greatness. We're on the precipice. We're still in the early phases of building an entire region. We don't have a signature sound yet. We don't have like superstar producers yet. We don't have a superstar young generation artist that we could galvanize yet. It's getting there. Like Ileana's getting really close. I'm watching her perform in the United States, and she's doing stages with Coldplay and selling out shows to 2,000-3,000 people. And I'm seeing people leave the shows that are non-Arab that are saying, I never knew that the music was that dope, and all her music is in Arabic. But we're not quite there yet for this generation, but it's incredibly encouraging. So the music has quantum leaped in quality in the last 7-8 years. The songwriting is better. The lyricism is better. The visuals have gotten a lot better. I think part of that is due to DIY access that never existed with like the TuneCores and the distro kids of the world. I think part of it is locally DSPs investing in playlisting our artists. I think part of it is the creator economy on social media and people having access to the public in ways they never had access to the public to express their voices. Some of it is technology and being able to download programs like Fruity Loops and buy loops off Splice and create records at a really high level, which was extremely difficult to do 10 years ago. It's not any one thing. It's a combination of things. It's all ships rise with the tide.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that like the quality is just rising. Everything is just slowly inching forward, and there will be like a tipping point where somebody kind of kicks it off. And then when that particular artist kicks it off, you're going to start to see massive tours, and you're going to start to see Live Nation, WME, everybody start to circle. I feel it. I feel the hovering right now.
Yeah.
But it's not there yet. And the reason why it's not there yet is the monetization level hasn't kicked in yet. We were talking about Mahadaganat. You sign an artist from Egypt, they'll get 100 million streams, and you'll barely see any income. So as a label, you're like, it's hard for me to invest in this because this artist is going to go get $500,000, $1 million, $2 million in brand deals. I can't participate. They're going to go on tour. I can't participate. In this region, that construct exists. In the U.S. construct, you can't manage. You can't be an agent. You can't tour an artist.
Yeah.
You can't participate in 360 that way. It's complicated. So it hasn't. The hands of the clock are at 9 and 3, and at some point they have to get to unison. When we get to 11 and 1, you're going to see everybody start coming in here.
What does that actually do to influence society, right? So like if I take a look at like reggaeton, did it make people love Dominican people? ما بعرف. If I take a look at like K-pop, did it make people love and care about Korea? I don't know. If I take a look at like anything, Afrobeats, I don't know. I'm not sure. And I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just curious. Once we get to the point where we do have stadium selling artists from the region rapping and singing, rapping, whatever in Arabic, is it going to make them all of a sudden humanize us in a little more? I don't know. I'm curious to know what you think.
Just because you mentioned all the other cultures, definitely. So when I was working at Spotify before I joined Empire, I was working part of the global cultures team. And my team had the Afro team, the Desi team, the Latin team. The Latin team, actually, the head of the Latin team in the US is the team that hired me to go in to launch the Arab Hub. And one thing I learned is that it takes time. And, people looking at reggaeton like it's cool, it's been forever. But I was in those rooms in 2019 still trying to convince the global editorial team to look at Shakira, not just at Taylor Swift, or to look at the other hits that are coming. That was after Despacito even. And they were still not playlisting it. We were shouting in those rooms and saying, have you heard about Afrobeats? And that was just 2020.
That's
They
crazy.
still didn't. So the whole boom that you're seeing now is just starting. But I always look at it as food. I'm a foodie. I love food. So I always talk about food, right? And then I always see before reggaeton blew up, you had taco in every corner. You had already burrito everywhere, right? And then if you look at K-pop, before K-pop blew up, you saw all these Korean barbecues all around the world. And now there's falafel, hummus, shawarma all around the fucking world. So technically, we're putting our spices within people's body now. Slowly, we're integrating our sound. So I look at the food journey, and then I see the music journey coming right after.
Yeah.
So I see us walking after. And this is actually part of our strategy because for the last 3-4 years, we're doing the biggest sound packs of the Airboard, which is real, authentic, real instrument, recording live instrument, building packs to a point when because we have a big roster of Empire Publishing, and we have some of the dopest producers there. And imagine that every top producer right now in the US have a folder that has a Kanun, Oud, Kawala, Kamanja there, but they're played by the real artist with their name on it and not stolen. And then that's part of after we got that Zatar in their brain. Now we're getting the that sound.
Are you about to announce Empire Falafel? Don't tell me. Don't
It
tell me.
won't
Don't
be
tell me.
falafel for sure. It won't be falafel. We'll be مسخن because we're hot, you know. Is
Killing it. Mic drop. Mic drop.
المهم. So what's happening now is like that. Imagine it gets to a point where a great example is the Kiss Daniel recent song Marhaba.
Yeah.
It's a song that we were in a camp with the DMS crew. I see Omar, the head of DMS here as well. They had a camp at our studio, and while we're doing the camp, Ghazi suddenly walks in the room with Kiss Daniel, one of the biggest Nigerian artists. And the producer, Rami Beats, who's an amazing producer, produces Kid Cudi, and he's one of our team, and he's Empire Publishing as well. Started playing him hip-hop beats at first, but then when he clicked that Arabi beat, Kiss Daniel was like, whoo! He was like freaking out, and he noticed it. And then next thing you know, he's in his hotel room building a studio to record the song Marhaba that I co-produced with Rami Beats, and then that thing becomes #1 right away and
Yeah.
blown up. And then that has the sounds. The claps there are like a Bedouin Palestini claps. The instrument, the Gnawa instrument, the drums are Moroccan drums, and then this Nigerian. And then what made that song blow up? So it's like North African sound with a West African artist. What made the song blow up is East Africans on TikTok dancing, and then this whole like taking all Africa in one place, and it's all by organic chilling in a studio. And
Amazing.
I think there isn't gaps. There's opportunities that we just need to work on and just collaborate on more.
Amazing. All right. Give it up for Ghazi and Suhel.
Shukran.
If you want to hear this interview, we're going to publish it on Quartertones. If you don't already subscribe to Quartertones, you should subscribe. I had a great interview with Suhel before. You can learn all about his come up. Thanks so much, guys.
We're not going to answer any questions.
Do we have time for questions? Oh, nice. Dope. Cool.
Carl. Yeah, hello.
Man of the people.
Okay, I won't take
If
too
that's
much
okay.
time. Thank you, Ghazi. Thank you for dropping bars, by the way. I just you said a statement and I understand it from a distribution vantage point that we don't have superstars yet. You gave the Eliana example, which I'd like to talk about maybe offline. But like as an A&R, from my vantage point, we got a lot of superstars. The difference here is that the commercialization is not from distribution. It's from brand deals, events. We're getting paid here more than they're getting paid in the States.
Yeah.
So from that vantage points and writing camps, when are we going to do the next writing camp here for Empire?
I'm in.
Done.
Y'all set up the infrastructure. I'll
All
show
right.
up.
You got a lot of
Being in the
witnesses.
studio is like my daughter always asks me, she's like, Baba, where are you, at the Black House? She thinks I live at the studio part-time. She's 7 years old. She literally thought I lived in the studio. So she didn't know I worked in the music business. So about 2 months ago, I took her. I said, Baba, rah ruh al Bayt al Aswad. She goes, for real? I said, yeah. I said, let's go. She's been asking for a piano. So I took her in the room. She saw the grand piano. She's like, what is this place? And so
this is Baba's house.
Yeah.
she thought it was my house. And then I had to tell her I work in the music business.
So my 6-year-old thinks that's my office.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
yeah.
I say all this to say is being in the
Yeah.
studio is where I find my peace. So
Likewise.
yeah.
So respect. man.
Doing a camp would be something I would be really honored to do. A camp in the Middle East somewhere, it would be fire.
All right. Daisy is telling us we got to wrap up.
Oh man.
We got one more? Daisy, is that all right? Okay. Amazing. Give it up for Daisy running this room perfectly. Whose question is it? Up there? Microphone up there.
What's up, guys? Suhel, I know you work with Spotify, and obviously, as you know, tech and data. I'm just curious if you guys have basically like any comment on the way streaming is going to go in the future. Like right now, obviously, Spotify paying what it pays, and a lot of artists obviously feel it's underpaid. And there's so many different platforms launching, and I'm just curious to know if you have any thoughts on like what the future of that looks like. Is it where music will be available and what it means for artists or labels moving forward? And it's kind of a vague question, but that's from your guys' experience. I would be curious to know what you think the future is going to look like there. And khashna or name, that's my second question.
Thank you.
That's like would take me about 3 hours to explain that to you. but the short answer is that monetization in the music business, unfortunately, has had a slower uptake or uptick in comparison to other segments of entertainment. Like gaming got it really right, really fast. Video did it pretty good. Music still has time to catch up. They still have to do better to understand how to monetize the super fan. And then it's also going to be like geopolitics and economics is going to determine how a lot of that happens over the course of the years of, you know, people adapting to the idea of paying for a subscription service versus going freemium. And then you have to look at markets like I'll give you a perfect example. Like Nigeria, the naira is 1/3 of what it was a year ago. So when you do the conversion on the subscription rates and you do the conversion on the freemium tier, their monetization rates have dropped, right? So if you're a label and you're doing pure mathematics, it makes it hard to continue to invest in a territory when the business is off. So you're one other example. In the continent of Africa, YouTube's only monetized in like 16 countries out of 60. So you're looking at monetization roadmaps, you're looking at bundling roadmaps, you're looking at super premium tiers, which Spotify's about to launch a super premium tier. You're looking at super fandom. There's a lot of stuff going on. So it's a very complicated construct, but it's something that I look at as a CEO of a company at all times. It's like my macro 40,000 feet in the sky vantage point, and it's also why I spend so much time traveling the world. Part of it is the art, and then the other side of it is I gotta protect and provide for the artists by making sure the business is growing in a positive trajectory.
Amazing. Thanks, everybody. Ghazi Shami, thanks so much.